If you're a teacher, you have a responsibility. You're literally like an agent of the state whose job it is to educate the population. The kid's frustrating you. Like, this isn't like an emotional thing. This would be like telling somebody who works at the DMV, oh, customers being frustrating? Yeah, just hit them. What? I quit teaching. Out of control students get 0 consequences with PBIS, restorative circles, and BIST. I don't know what those acronyms are. Somebody in chat said this is like a teacher who's mad they can't corporal punishment people anymore. What are we mad about?
It's Trish, and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we're going to be talking about a much requested topic, and that is the topic of why modern school discipline programs like PBIS and BIST.
Okay, I see another video from this person up here. Why quit teaching? Violent kids, corrupt unions, catty coworkers, grade inflation, and too much work. I gotta say, the fact that meager compensation isn't one of the things listed here is very strange to me. Like, if I was, it's like something that makes me not trust you right off the bat. You know what I mean? Like, what are your issues here? And like, one of them isn't that, because that's like the main thing. PBIS equals positive behavioral intentions and supports. BIST is behavior intervention support team. God, I hate bureaucratic acronyms. That sounds so stupid. To be fair, teachers unions are often pretty bad. It really depends. I've heard stories of some teachers unions that actually do a decent job of providing a collective front. And I've heard some teachers unions are like pretty terrible. But okay, what's the video? What's the video? We'll see.
And so many others just do not work. I think that we can all agree that the quality of parenting has changed. Therefore, I hate to say the quality of kids, but the moral development of kids that are coming into our classrooms are at a totally different place.
Everybody says this. All adults say this. Like, the modern generation of kids are so much worse than the previous generation. It's always said.
Some other time, far, far away, it was kind of understood that, you don't cuss the teacher out, you don't throw a desk across the room, you don't wear clothes that resemble a bathing suit, you don't yell and scream and try to intimidate people. Like, all of these things, it used to be kind of understood by the time you got to school that you just don't behave that way.
No. So one of the problems here is that when we talk about the good old days, a lot of people imagine the 1950s and 60s as like a collection of propaganda bulletins and like school resource videos, So when they think of school in the 1950s, they think of a bunch of white suburban kids who are like perfectly dressed, perfectly behaved, and if you don't think high schoolers back in the 50s were like starting fights, doing drugs, and like f***ing people or what, like, there's so much data that you can pull from here, but the idea that people have been getting more unruly is, I don't think that's true. There might be some variability, like generation to generation, depending on the ways in which they act out, but literally everyone says this. Like, the modern generation is so senseless, they're so aggressive, like, yeah.
It was almost unthinkable in certain eras. And even in 2023, if you were to go to other countries, other cultures, maybe even different sub-regions of countries, you will find that some way, somehow, they've retained a lot of those values. But there are other pockets and other regions that kind of look like a zoo. I don't know how to say what it looks like. It just looks like chaos and complete
I wonder which region she's referring to.
Mayhem. And strangely enough, those out of control schools are the very ones that gravitate toward these kind of new age discipline philosophies. Now, before I get further into the video, I kind of want to talk more about them specifically, like PBIS and BIST. BIST is another one that was actually really popular in my region, but I haven't seen it as popular nationally. But I want to talk about them more in case a few of you have no idea what I'm talking about. And I'm going to overgeneralize.
So she's dog whistling racism, huh? Well, I don't want to jump to it right away, but like, whenever people talk about this or whatever, like, oh, kids these days, they're so blah, blah, blah. Like, what is basically being said, maybe not necessarily by her, but in aggregate, broadly, it's like a discourse on race. The argument is like, oh, we can't keep pumping money into these inner city schools because all these crazy inner city kids just want to do drugs and have sex unprotected and fight with school resource officers, and they don't care, they don't even show up, and blah, 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 blah. And like, the truth is the same, like, literally everywhere, okay? In neighborhoods that are poor, that have high gang activity, where the kids don't have much hope for the future, you're going to see a lot of like disproportionately bad behavior in those schools. And obviously, it is the schools where they have the most bad behavior that you would see the most like approaches to fixing that behavior taken. But this attitude it's never really got us anywhere, The problem is a broader socioeconomic one. Kids aren't going to magically do well in school when they feel they have like no hope for the future just because you've like changed up your school resource officer training fact sheet. It doesn't work that way.
Generalize here. So if you have a school that is using PBIS and it works amazing, please let me know in the comments. But basically, in general, a lot of these programs have completely gotten rid of like any negative consequences. So just for fun, I did a little poll yesterday.
What does that mean? Okay, I might be out of date here, but when I was growing up, that was around the time that the zero tolerance policy attitude towards misbehavior in school became more common. And as I understand it, schools are less tolerant than ever before. Like, I've heard so many stories of people getting suspended or even expelled for drawings for like a single fight, even like fifth graders or something. Like two fifth graders will punch each other and it'll be like, "Oh, sorry, you're out." Like, what? They're like 10. What do you mean? Have they laxened up in the past decade? I mean, I graduated in 2011, so it's been some time, but I just remember there was an era of like incredible strictness. Much more lax. It has changed? Maybe.
About whether or not people think corporal punishment should be brought back. And unfortunately, it was one of those timed surveys.
There is no evidence that corporal punishment improves literally anything under anybody who's like wistful, especially a former teacher who's like wistfully fantasizing about beating the shit out of the kids who are disrespecting them. That's you trying to fix your problems. That has nothing to do with the well-being of the kids. Every study we have is that corporal punishment makes things worse. Like, there's literally no reason.
Didn't know how to take that option off, so it disappeared after 19 hours. But people actually voted more highly in favor of bringing back corporal punishment, but it wasn't as big of a gap as I thought. I want to say maybe around 55% of people voted yes, and the rest voted no. But these days, corporal punishment is not just considered like paddling a kid, although that is legal in 19 states. Writing lines can be considered corporal punishment. Walking laps and doing exercises can be considered corporal punishment.
I have never heard anyone say that writing lines is corporal punishment. Maybe some school districts interpret it that way. I've never heard that. By the way, I don't think that writing lines is necessarily like an effective way of disciplining kids for any reason. I don't know if it is. It seems like it probably wouldn't be because it's nonsense, but it's like punishment-based stuff. Punishment very rarely works, you know, to change people's behavior. It doesn't. Walking laps. I mean, if you're at like gym class and you misbehave and the gym teacher's like, "Hey, go walk laps." I guess that's fine, right? Like, you know, like go for it. I remember one time I was in middle school and I got in a fight with a kid. I was like 6th grade or something. And I pushed him and he fell on concrete. He was totally unhurt, but like I pushed him on concrete, which is worse than pushing people on grass. And the coach, the gym teacher, he came up and he was like, "All right, you know you're screwed, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, I can go report this, or you can run laps until I tell you not to." I'm like, "I guess I'll run laps, sir." He was like, "Yep, go ahead." And I and I ran laps. That guy later ended up being the superintendent of the entire school district, Mr. Kessler, who may or may not still be. I don't know if he might be too old to be doing the job anymore. I mean, for all I know at this point, he's passed. I don't know if he is. He's still there? Oh, yeah. Oh, he retired. Yeah. My man. Thanks for not reporting me. He's kept that mustache his entire goddamn life. Probably born with it.
Just basically anything that would bring about any...
Vosh, you don't know how bad some kids can get, man? No, I know. Kids are terrible, okay? I know that. I have to deal with you people. That doesn't mean that we should just, like, emotionally... Like, we shouldn't just, like, go, "Oh, well, this is frustrating," and then just jump into, like, ineffective teaching methods, you know? If you're a teacher, you have a responsibility. You're literally like an agent of the state whose job it is to educate the population. The kid's frustrating you. Like, this isn't like an emotional thing. This would be like telling somebody who works at the DMV, like, "Oh, customers being frustrating? Yeah, just hit them." Like, what? It's like, "Oh, yeah, you have no idea how DMV customers get, man." No, I do. I've been to the DMV. But that doesn't... that doesn't fix it. What do you mean? Cathartic as it may seem in your fantasies, this is not an effective solution to the line.
kind of physical discomfort could be considered corporal punishment. But anyhow, in all...
What are you doing to kids to make them physically... Yeah, I would consider that corporal punishment, depending on how it's done.
All of these new systems, all of that stuff is completely gone. They call that punitive, and they say it's bad, bad, bad. In many instances...
Yes. All of the data we have, as far as I'm aware, suggests that punitive approaches towards behavioral correction don't work.
Office referrals are completely off the table unless the kid is doing something so serious the cops should get called. And even things like taking away recess and a lot of these
Am I totally off on this? But like right now, aren't we seeing more and more instances of cops getting over involved in school discipline stuff, especially in the inner city schools that she kind of like gestured at before, where like two kids in high school get in a fight, and rather than them being broken up by a teacher and sent to the principal's office, the cops will arrest them, which is insane. But it's like more and more, I just hear about that more and more with like more and more school resource offices, you know? The juvie pipeline. Yeah, yeah, it's like really direct.
programs is a complete no-no. Now here's where it gets kind of weird. They say that they're rewards based in many ways, more so PBIS than BIS, but the way it really works out is it's not always the best behaved kids that are getting the most rewards like you would think. Oftentimes the worst behaved kids are the ones that are getting all of the rewards because that's a teacher's only recourse, so they're trying.
Yeah. If the point of a reward-based system is to address the behavior of students who aren't doing well, obviously the ones who have more disciplinary issues would flag the system more often. Like so this is what I mean by people having a punitive mind and it with their ability to fix problems. In her head, she's like, why are the bad kids getting rewards? Because she's disconnected from the actual empirics of the situation. In reality, you know, it doesn't matter how good or bad any kid is or how receptive they are to whatever, you know. You take the approach that best manages the behavioral problems. That's it, you know? Yeah, you're not here to punish evildoers. You're here to make sure kids get a good education.
Trying everything that they can do to try to motivate the worst behaved kids by saying, you know, I'll give you 25 scholar dollars, I'll give you a bag of candy, I'll give you, you know, a 15-minute sit in the teacher's desk pass, just whatever we can think of.
Okay, so we're talking about like 2-year-olds. We're not talking about high schoolers, right? I don't think high schoolers are being baited with 15 minutes in the teacher chair as a okay, so we're talking about zygotes just sort of rolling wetly around the schoolyard. Yeah, okay. Man, if you have like a kid, if you have a kid who's doing like badly in class and has behavioral problems, there's probably a reason for that. A lot of kids who are bullies or have behavioral problems are being like abused at home or whatever, you know? Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into that. So if you have this kid who's kind of being like a dick and you're like, "Hey, listen, okay? I wish you behaved differently and look, let's meet this halfway, okay? If you can go like one class without disrupting, then I'll give you a candy." And then you look at that from afar and it's like, why are the worst kids getting candies? But when you like actually look and think for a second, it's like, oh, okay, well, we're taking an approach that maybe like can motivate those kids who need it the most. All right. Like, yeah.
Of honestly, to
Sorry, I'm coming off like really negative to this person, but I feel like I'm seeing a bunch of like warning flags. Like I'm looking at a distant hill and there are red flags popping up all over this I've only seen 3 minutes of her talking, but yeah.
motivate the most challenging students because we know we can't just say, fine, you're sitting out of recess, or fine, that's detention for you. That's not there anymore. So what actually effectively ends up happening in a lot of these scenarios is the best behaved kids that are like always quiet and never causing a problem. Many times those kids get passed over and all of the attention still goes to the most misbehaved kids.
Yeah. Of course more attention would go to the worst behaving kids. That's the point. That's the point. What would you need to give attention to the kids who are doing well and being well behaved? They're already doing the thing. Okay.
So in weird ways, it's almost like their negative behavior is reinforced. And in even
No, because they only get the positive attention when they don't engage in the negative behavior. The attention they're getting is contingent upon them not doing the negative thing. They're not getting rewarded for doing the bad thing. They're getting rewarded for changing, or at least temporarily changing. It's not always a perfect fix. There is no perfect fix.
even worse scenarios, believe this or not, many teachers will believe it. The worst behaved kids, if you do dare send them to the office, they will actually come back with snacks. They had iPad time. They got to spend one-on-one time.
Matt, we really are talking about like 5-year-olds, aren't we? iPad time? We're literally talking about like second graders here. Was she seriously considering corporal punishment for these kids? I think corporal punishment is terrible against high schoolers, but are we seriously talking about spanking like 5-year-olds here? Is that really what she was bringing up? That's weird, dude. That's psycho. So many adults or parents, teachers, whatever. Typically parents and teachers are adults. Just think of children as like property, or like lesser in like a moral sense. Obviously they're stupider, but like lesser things, like little slaves that they can mistreat to fix their own behavioral problems. Really weird. Yeah, they don't think of them as human.
Time with the principal, building a relationship, and oftentimes talking about how horrible the teacher is. And again, we're
Oh, she's so projecting. Dude, you send these misbehaving kids the principal and they come back and then it turns out the principal was talking shit about you behind your back? That's a you problem, my dude. I really don't think that the average principal is selling out good teachers to these like 5-year-olds.
weirdly enough, a lot of these systems aren't even being used the way they're supposed to be. They're just kind of getting used in crisis mode and bribe the kid mode.
I do agree, by the way. I know how bad the American schooling system is. I'm defending the concept of positive punishment, or sorry, like positive like like trying to bait them into not being little shits. I'm sure many schools like horribly misuse these concepts. I'm not denying that, but she seems to be in favor of the worst, like the worst ideas, you know?
And even more so, the worst behaved students actually get rewarded. So even if you
That's
totally
not
100
okay.
million% disagree with corporal punishment, I want you to imagine how different classrooms would be if we brought it back tomorrow.
Yep. Okay. And now we're gonna we're gonna enter her fantasy where she gets to beat these unruly 5-year-olds, and then they all respect her. And that's what now we get, because she thinks about this a lot, and now we get to enter her world. Okay. It's like Persona. Okay. This is her mental palace. All right. We're entering it, and it's honestly not that dissimilar to the first one in Persona 5.
And even if you took paddling off the table, let's say you mouth off to the teacher.
Even if we took paddling off the table. So yeah, even if, okay, fine, we'll be reasonable. Leaving aside taking a like a wooden paddle and beating these small children, okay, we'll leave that aside, fine.
And you've got to do 20 push-ups. Or you say, I'm not ever
I don't think 5-year-olds can do push-ups. I've never heard of forcing children to do push-ups unless it's in gym class and it's just part of the gym thing. I don't think little kids can do push-ups. Like maybe they can kind of like wobble out a fake push. Okay, that seems kind of weird.
doing this assignment again, and you have to write lines over it. Or somebody came up with an amazing example in the comments of the survey yesterday. They said, why not bring back community service? Oh, you want to act up in the classroom? You get to scrub toilets with Dawn dish soap, of course. We don't want any bad chemicals, but you get to scrub toilets and help beautify your school. Now,
Okay, I'm gonna play fair with one thing here specifically, not with her. I don't want to be fair with her. I will say, however, I genuinely do like the idea of a kind of broader community service attitude that all students take towards their schools. I know that Japanese schools are more like this, where they do like class presidents and they'll like rotate whose job it is to take out the garbage or clean the chalkboard or whatever. There's a lot wrong with Japanese schools, but the school is a community space where children spend a significant portion of many years of their life. And I think the idea of like more camaraderie around cleaning the school, like, oh, like maybe not cleaning the toilets. I don't think you should be having 5-year-olds cleaning toilets. I don't think they should do that. However, if there was like, I don't know, some kind of like rotating janitorial or like class cleanup duty, and if you were disruptive in the class, you're like, okay, Jason, all right, Jason, okay, come on, we're gonna do it together, all right? And then they're like, I don't know, maybe that could be because it's a little bit more constructive, I think. But even then, no guarantee. What age is she talking about? Well, based on the way she's talking about stuff like, as a reward, these kids get to sit in the teacher's chair for 15 minutes. Now, that has never happened in my time at school. I don't know what age range that's meant to be, but I know that by the time a student is like 10 years old, that's not cool. Probably earlier than 10 years old. Because like 10 is like what, 6th, 5th grade or something? And I think by then, if somebody was like, yeah, here, you get to sit in the teacher's chair, I would have just been like, oh my God, no, what? No, thank you. I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that. But like, these are not high schoolers.
I know some of you, like your eyes are rolling so hard you've nearly been blinded, but
That's true.
A lot of you guys are cheering right now like, yes, bring it back. Because we know, whether you agree with it or not, at a deep internal level that it would work. And that's the
Yeah, literally, we're in her fantasy right now. You know, hey, no proof, no studies. You know, okay, that it would feel good to beat those children and punish them for being mean to you. You know, dude, it's literally like revenge fantasy porn for her. It's pretty fucked up. I'm glad she's not teaching anymore. There are a lot of teachers like this, by the way. I mean, I don't have kids. If I ever had kids and entered them into school, I feel like I'd be kind of a helicopter parent. Not for my kids, but for the teachers. And not in the cringe way where, like, my kid gets a B and I yell at the teacher for it. But if I get the feeling that any of them are, like, freak, like, power-tripping authoritarians, you know?
problem with all of these kind of ivory tower, loosey-goosey discipline things. They sound amazing, maybe to some academics.
She's calling them weak and liberal. Leaving aside all the euphemisms, what she's saying is these systems are too liberal.
That haven't even had to substitute teach a real public, K through 12 school, like maybe ever, but at least not in the last 30 years. These philosophies sound so good to them, but they are removed from the actual day-to-day realities of what teachers are going through.
It really is just a repeat of like all other political discourse. Hey, you high-minded liberals have your naive ideas on reform and on prisoners, but in reality, a lot of them are just shit, and you need to be hard on crime and punish them, and da-da-da. Like, it's the same argument. It's just teacher-specific.
And what a joke these modern systems have become. I think the thing that people have forgotten, and this might be a controversial point to some of you, but a lot of times kids, if undisciplined, untrained, untaught, unparented, they actually turn out to be tiny little monster people.
Yep. Yeah, yes, obviously, lots of kids are huge assholes. That's what you signed up for by becoming a teacher. Now, I think teachers should be extremely well compensated for the valuable work they do, but yes, that is the job.
The worst of humanity that is inside all of us, if not somehow disciplined away through love and care and
Wait, hold on. This is not at all true. Oh, wait, hold on.
Support and concern and talking and yes, consequences. If that doesn't happen, then the worst of humanity gets embodied in these little people.
Okay, see, so this is another, like, this is like, by conservative argument, I mean, this goes back thousands of years. The idea is that people are fundamentally evil, and that the chains of society, like, sort of bend and break them into an acceptable form. Whereas more liberal or leftist-minded people tend to be of the opinion that, like, people are naturally good, and, like, there are social incentives that push people towards evil. I've always been more of the blank slate idea. I think that people can really go either way. I think that young people, like children, are innately selfish and unsympathetic. I think that they are extremely self-interested and they don't understand or care about what other people want that well. That's not the same as them being evil. It's hard to even call it evil because it's kind of like, it's a kid. Like, they haven't fully developed the capacity for making moral decisions. But as a teacher, it's your job to look through that. And this is something kids are always going to be. They're always going to be selfish and unsympathetic. They grow out of that, at least if they're taught well, if things go well. And it's your job to deal with that, and it's your job to direct them in a positive way.
They lie, they cheat, they scream, they hit people, they bite, they spit. And depending upon how...
Okay, so we are definitely talking about 5-year-olds here.
That is or isn't handled when they're young, those behaviors can either get worse and more apparent, or they can get sneakier and more manipulative and learn to hide them better. And in a weird way, what I think a lot of these...
If you don't teach children not to bite when they're young, their bite strength grows more and more, and their bites become more dangerous. Stop your 5-year-old from biting out of anger today, or there will be a 25-year-old chomping people's arms off. The big shark bites, you know?
Discipline philosophies do, since they focus so much on, like, okay, let's sit in a restorative circle and talk about our feelings. Let's process with a counselor and talk about why what I did hurt other people.
This can work. It could, yeah. I know it doesn't give you the satisfaction of decking a 5-year-old, but those approaches can work. Yeah, I'm sorry it's not as cathartic to you, an adult who is biologically capable of emotional regulation, unlike the children you're teaching.
A lot of these kids get to be masters at manipulating adults, and I've just been floored at how sometimes
all children are manipulative because they're selfish. They will lie and cheat and steal to get things they want, usually candy, because they don't have an understanding of what it means to wrong other people. They don't have a broader ethical system. It doesn't mean they're evil. They literally don't have the tools. It would be like calling a wolf evil because it kills helpless deer. Like, there aren't like animals, like humans are the only animal that are really capable of making moral judgment calls, as far as we're aware of, like really capable of it. And you have to have a fully developed brain, or at least a mostly developed brain. You can't be 5, you know?
Some of the worst behaved children in the classroom have administrators and counselors completely fooled because they learn quick to adapt and how to play the game and how to get out of consequences.
See, this literally just all reads out of like projection. Like there were kids she hated, and she was like, "Oh, these kids have the school counselors in their pocket." Like she's seething at these 5-year-olds who are like, "This 5-year-old has turned the principal against me. The you know, the school resource officers bought their trip." Like I don't trust her at all, man. I mean, she's not a teacher anymore. Did she quit or get fired? I don't know. Like that's really weird.
That aren't really even available to begin with, but let's say there are a few consequences.
She's terrified of these kids, chat. What is this? It's a meme post. Okay, that's fair. You weren't. I would ban you forever, and also in real life, but it wasn't. It wasn't directed at me. I was hoping that was a YouTube short where she did something embarrassing.
In a school, like maybe ISS or out of school suspension, kids learn how to manipulate their way out of those and hide their misbehavior even better. Meanwhile, because as a culture and a society, we have,
as opposed to corporal punishment, which definitely doesn't just incentivize children to be more sneaky with their misbehavior,
have changed the definition of right and wrong so much, kids are
see? It's the broader authoritarian thing. It's so underneath all of this, like her fantasizing about beating children, you know, is a fear of moral degeneracy, the authoritarian mindset. This is basically like the it's teaching and nursing that are basically like the female equivalents to being a cop, you know? Like they're gendered, and in both cases, people who are petty and power hungry and cruel will seek out careers where they have the power to with people, and like in a fashion which is almost like unchecked. You know, it gives them so much power, and that would be teaching and nursing. Those are the two big ones, and she's 100% doing the cop brain thing here, you know?
Being empowered in their misbehavior. I actually saw a video from a college. Maybe I saw this about I think it happened maybe about a month and a half ago, but this lady, this young woman was yelling at her college professor, cursing.
Now we're talking about college. College students are adults, nominally at least. They don't always act like it. Lying low corporal punishment encourages lying. Damn, is this like actual evidence? Hell, get that evidence out of here. Whoa, this is an evidence-free zone. Okay, she fantasizes about beating children, and we're not going to let the real world get in the way of that.
At her, refusing to follow directions, and she had campus security called on her to remove her, and somehow, you know, of course those kind of videos go viral. In all the comments, everyone was talking about how the teacher should have been fired. The teacher is so terrible. How dare—
Wait, what? So she's not even talking about school policy. The campus officers took the kid away, not the kid, the college student, and she's like, well, the comments agreed with the student. What? What does this have to do with anything? This is literally just like she doesn't like young people. That's literally it. Like she just wants, we're not even talking about the power the teacher had, because the teacher called the campus police on the student.
The teacher do this and that, completely ignoring that even if that professor was wrong, the way the student handled the situation was wrong. But we're living in a culture, for whatever reason, that says if there is any kind of injustice,
yes. Our degenerate culture in which people in the comments agree with the behavior of a student in this video I'm just generally referencing. Yes. Why spanking doesn't work. Whoa, get that evidence out of here.
You can riot, loot, burn.
Ooh. Riot, loot, and burn. Really, is that something students do, or is that something you're pulling directly from Republican headlines on Black Lives Matter protesters? Like I said, guys, it's cop brain. Not just the fascist, like, underlying logic. This is cop brain shit, 100%. Yes, these rioting 5-year-olds. These arsonist 5-year-olds. Yes, of course, naturally. Riot, loot, and burn. Just to be clear, by the way, for somebody whose job it was to manage the behavior of children, no sane teacher should default to those words when using hyperbolic language against the behavior of children. Like, think of where her brain has to be at for her to have to string together a sentence decrying the behavior of these students and she goes to riot, loot, and burn. After earlier talking about pretty, transparently inner city schools, right?
People just do whatever you want in the name of like, this thing shouldn't have happened. So now I'm going to do 50 things that shouldn't happen. And my 50 things are canceled out because this one wrong thing really did happen.
What?
And that is the mentality that our young people are being brainwashed with. And unfortunately, they are not
What? Incoherent.
getting a lot of really great adult examples, even with the so-called Karen phenomena of like all these viral videos of people just chewing out customer service workers, airline workers, any public servant whatsoever. It's always that, oh, this one little thing happened that was wrong, so I completely went ballistic and lost my mind, and now I'm a hero. And I am a
Is she suggesting that the viral phenomena of Karens is a pro-Karen? Is she under the impression that people post videos of blonde women screaming at service workers, and these videos are posted and commented on and liked and retweeted by people sympathetic? Is she retarded? Unironically, what is happening here? This works against her point. People in the comments usually side with the retailer. People will almost always side with workers being yelled at. The worker in any viral video has to do some extraordinary shit. There was a video recently of a what's it, Waffle House, of a lady like throwing a chair back at a customer, and people were still gassing up the cashier. People hate customers. Yeah, she parried the chair. I remember.
really afraid that we are actually reinforcing that in school. Because a lot of times the conversation goes even with the teacher. If a kid loses their mind in class and goes crazy, they come back to the teacher and essentially say, well, what did you do to make that kid so upset? What could you have done to prevent that kid from becoming so upset? What can you do in the future so that the kid won't be so upset?
Yeah, that's your job. Sorry. Whoa. Your performance gets evaluated and people are like, hey, what can we do to better... Wow, welcome to working. Hi.
And meanwhile, the kid is sitting there feeling justified and awesome and really happy with themselves about how they won another one. And they can even convince
this happened. God, she's so bitter. She's like reliving. It's like Vietnam in her head. There's like 1,000-yard stare of her inner self remembering all those times that snotty kid she hated getting away with stuff, because in reality, that snotty kid was a lot more reasonable than she thought he was, and she was acting like a screaming bitch.
Themselves that they are like true freedom fighters.
Oh my God. Right after the Vietnam analogy. Holy shit. Okay.
All their teachers. There's also a huge sense of entitlement getting bred. I think in this generation, and schools are feeding into it, because in a lot of these professional developments we have about all these random different systems, it's all about, well, give the kid a choice. Don't tell the kid no. Find 3 yeses before you ever have to resort to a no.
Again, this is just very simple behavioral psychology. It is literally proven to be more effective than just saying no. People, especially young, stupid people, like 5-year-olds, are more likely to go along with something they wouldn't otherwise if they have to pick it from a set of options rather than being told that's what they're going to do. This is like really obvious. Yeah. If there's like a kid and the kid has to like sit down and do something, you can say like, okay, do you want to do your work and then get an extra 5 minutes in the recess, or do your work and get an extra candy at the end? And then like, then the kid will go like, oh, okay, because they have a choice now. Like, I'm just like spitballing this, but it's like, this is very simple behavioral psychology. It's not...
Did they not like what you're doing? Well, why not? Why wasn't it more fun and engaging and entertaining? And so again, all of the responsibility is being put on the teachers to create this like mega fun, enriching environment where everybody is doing things that they think are so incredibly interesting and awesome.
It's your job. Yeah. Is she mad that the 5-year-olds she's teaching aren't putting in their equal share of effort? Sorry, lady, they're not getting paid either.
Yet meanwhile, they're like piling on these super rigorous state standards and loads of super challenging standardized tests and saying, oh, by the way, make sure the kids can do all of
They're not that hard. It's your job. Teach the kids. Do your job.
These things while having an outrageously fun time at the same time. Oh, and having a really well-controlled, well-managed classroom. Good luck. And so you can see again why teachers are just quitting in droves. Another problem with...
They're quitting because they're not getting paid. Common Core is pretty shit. I'm not saying Common Core isn't shit or that our standardized tests aren't shit. I'm saying that she's literally complaining about having to do her job. Like, that's literally what she's essentially saying is, I think it's bullshit that I'm expected to teach these students the skills they need to learn and the info they need to learn, while also providing an instructive and informative classroom environment that's conducive to learning. And she's mad about that. Teachers' jobs have unrealistic standards, though. Okay, ley line lost. Everyone else who's agreeing with her right now, think about this. If she felt like the problem was that too many burdens were being placed on the teacher, why isn't she asking for more pay / more teachers / more resources? She's not. The solutions that she's proposing so far have been corporal punishment and less positive support for the kids. She doesn't actually have an issue with the workload. The problem that she has is that she doesn't get to beat the children for catharsis. That's it. I'm obviously in favor of more teachers, more pay, etc., changes to our standard school system, but she doesn't want those. She's not advocating for progressive reforms to our school system.
With like these kind of programs like PBIS and BIS is that the entire premise that they're built on is that the only reason a kid ever misbehaves is that they don't understand the expectation or they lack the skill to follow through with the expectation. And
nobody believes that is the only reason a child misbehaves. They just expect you to do what you can about it.
could that be true sometimes? Of course. But more likely than not, my kids could have written a 5-paragraph essay on each and every rule and why we have it and what happens when people don't follow it. But at the end of the day, if there are no punishments at all for not following the expectations, a huge subset of kids just aren't going to. And then when they're rewarded
Research disagrees with this.
by bad behavior, you're actually
That is not what is happening.
reinforcing the behaviors that you don't want to see. Another huge problem I see, not only in schools with a lot of modern parenting, is that kids are starting to really lack having a correlation between their choices and their behavior and actual consequences. And really that's at the heart of the reason for any kind of punishment or discipline or whatever you want to call it. If the idea goes that if when a child is small and they get consequences and they associate bad choices with some kind of pain, that
Guys, she literally just wants to beat kids. There's nothing subtle about this. That's literally all she wants to do. That's the whole reason for this video. That's literally it.
will eventually internalize that understanding and they won't do big things wrong in the future that lands them in big trouble, like being in jail, for example.
Again, gotta keep repeating this. All of the evidence we have indicates corporal punishment does not lead to improvement of behavior. And likewise, we do have psychological evidence to suggest that more positive kinds of reinforcement are more effective. She does not care about she doesn't care about the well-being of the kids. She just wants to beat them. That's it. This is all about appealing to the catharsis and frustration her and people like her who are petty and insecure and fragile and get upset easily and have poor emotional control. And they take those problems out by abusing children. There are plenty of parents who do this. There are plenty of teachers who do this. She probably does it to both her children and to her former students.
Of course, some people never learn this, but that's another video altogether. Another huge emphasis of a lot of these programs is the fact that students should never feel embarrassed, never feel any sort of shame about any kind of behavior, never be singled out publicly, and never really kind of be scolded or reprimanded. I remember in
Yes, because publicly shaming a student in front of their class when we're dealing with like 5-year-olds usually doesn't beget positive outcomes. You learn this even in like regular jobs. The rule is criticize privately, praise publicly. You do that with employees. This is like management 101. If you have a problem with what something somebody's done, you tell them in private, but you reinforce good behaviors publicly. This is far more effective than the other way around. And the reason for that is because making people feel like shit, especially when they're 5 in front of all of the people they know and spend time with, doesn't actually beget positive emotions. It just causes like festering negative ones that don't lead to proper emotional regulation.
In the program BIST that I had in multiple different schools and districts, our main catchphrase when we talked to a kid was to constantly remind them over and over again.
Even the Army does this? Oh, yeah, that's a good point. If you've ever wondered, oh, hold on, if someone f***ed up, the whole group gets reprimanded, rarely individuals unless a crime was committed. Yeah, one of the reasons why people think there's a weird like group punishment dynamic going on in the Army, and I've never been in the military, but like I've read about like psychologically why does some of this stuff happen, and not the military is not Full Metal Jacket. Like the first half of Full Metal Jacket, that's not everything in the military is like the screamingest drill sergeant and all of the pants pissingest boys. Okay, it's not all of it, but there's usually an attitude of like communal reward and punishment that is taken in the army and other group settings. And a big reason for this is because if a person is seen to be kind of like a fuck up, um, like it can cause like a self-reinforcing cycle where if a person makes a mistake but it's corrected in private and addressed it in private, they can improve and it doesn't feel like a mark against them as a person. But if that bad behavior is made a public stigma, it doesn't go away. See, even if a student gets chewed out in public and then later improves that behavior, they still got chewed out in public. And though the punishment may be gone, the memories all of the classmates have of their bad behavior continue to influence their perception of that student. And the student knows this, which can make a lot of them just feel really like depressive and just feel like they don't have, there's no point in engaging because like they're a fuck up anyway, you know? The consequences of social shaming are near permanent, you know? At least it feels that way in school. Yeah, just like basic stuff, you know? I feel like, man, do you think, I know she probably doesn't make anywhere near as much as me because she was like a teacher. I don't know what she's doing now. Do you think she should like pay me for this? Hey, if you watch this video, you should like wire me some money because this is like legit everything you missed while getting your teaching cert, you know?
I'm not mad and you're not in trouble. I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. And I mean, like, literally, we're told this over and over again. Make sure the kids know that you are not mad and they are not in trouble. And so, like, what is that?
Yes, because it makes them less defensive and makes it more likely that they'll listen to you rather than them just breaking down and crying. We're talking about 5-year-olds.
Really teaching kids? Like, a kid cusses me out and throws their lunch tray across the room, and I'm supposed to say, I'm not mad. You're just.
Yes, you're an adult. Yes, you are supposed to keep your cool when kids misbehave. It's your job. They're 5.
Awesome. No, that is so not real life. A student is allowed to say or do whatever they want to me, essentially, and I'm supposed to say, you're not in trouble.
They're children. Holy fuck, it's actually cop grant. It is kind of like, it's an interesting case study. What do you mean, Tempest? It's like, it's an interesting case study, I think, into how the authoritarian mindset is usually most touted by very weak people. This woman is unbelievably weak. Like, she's still fantasizing about beating the children who gave her trouble when she was a teacher. Like, she's pathetic. And as like a reflex or like a defensive mechanism, she she turns to these fantasies, these obsessive fantasies about punishing these infants because she can't control herself, and she knows that. She just doesn't think it's a bad thing. She's like, what, you expect me to keep my cool when a 5-year-old disrespects me? Yes. Oh, I like teaching, Tempest. I've always liked teaching as a subject.
I bet you just really didn't understand the impact that your actions would have on me. Let me sit down and explain it to you and let's have a conversation about it.
Yeah, yes. She's literally like mocking the thing you're supposed to do, yeah.
And how well do you think that went over? The kind of kids
with you? How well do you think, how well do I think that goes over? Well, how do I think it went over, past tense, with you? Probably pretty poorly.
Will cuss and throw and flip out. There's not a whole lot of reasoning that's going to stop that behavior. That's my unpopular opinion.
Yeah, you don't reason with them. You don't logic them out of their misbehavior. They're 5. You try to present yourself in a way that maximizes the likelihood of them calming down, and then you try to use a basic understanding of behavioral psychology to get them to change their behavior. Holy f***, she doesn't think people like that can change. Oh, there's no way this lady thinks people can improve, like as a concept. She's definitely one of those people who mentally sorted the children she had in her class into good kids and bad kids, and she just felt like she just wanted to beat the bad kids because she didn't want to take no disrespect from them, and like she just wanted to spend time with the good kids. She essentially wanted to not do her job.
Now, to me, that is not to say that you should not try to do everything before getting to the more serious consequences. I still think we should talk to kids and explain things, but I think that there's got to be teeth that go along with that whole system.
Oh shit, she wants to bite them back too.
or else again it becomes a joke. Now I've got to pause because I know that there's just a few mama bears out there that are just kind of imagining the worst scenario they've ever seen or heard of in a classroom and thinking that I'm advocating for that. I'm absolutely not. I really do think that what has happened is the pendulum has swung all the way over. I think we've all, seen movies or heard stories of like maybe somebody that went to a really strict Catholic school and, a kid accidentally knocks their book off the table and then the nun comes and smacks him on the knuckle with a ruler. I'm not talking about going back to that time, but what I am saying is that somehow we've gone from that in certain places all the way to what we have now. And now the teachers feel
just totally feels-based argument. Like literally no, like completely vibes-based. In her head, she just has a vague emotional memory of what it was like teaching. And she just, yeah. And she remembers that she was a well-behaved kid, and she probably had an abusive parent or so. I don't know. Usually authoritarian-minded people were damaged from childhood. It could have been fixed, but it wasn't. And there's some psychological bugbear that's making her the way she is now. It's all feelings.
In that little story that I gave, like they're the kid that's just kind of like blocking and hoping that now 50 people don't metaphorically smack them with a ruler. Because that's how it feels being a teacher in a classroom of sort of hostile little people or big people if you're a middle school or high school teacher.
Yep, there it is. Elementary school teacher. There it is. All right, good. Just good to get the confirmation. There we go. Yes, the overwhelming, the agonizing terror of being in a room full of rowdy second graders. And having them all despise you. I wonder why they hated her.
It's like very unsettling because that there's just like this delicate ecosystem that could absolutely explode at any given minute and you really don't know what you can do.
It really sounds like she was a shit. This seems like a skill issue to me. How many third graders do you think she could take in a fight? I think this bitch would lose to like 3. I think one of them would like grab her hair and like hang off of it, and then 2 would like beat her up when she falls to the ground. It's over. No shot. I could defeat an infinite number of third graders in martial combat. It's Jover.
In that situation. At this point, sadly, I think we're to the point where teachers are actually expected to raise kids and parent them inside of the classroom without any of the tools and time that their actual parents have.
The tools being corporal punishment? Because I don't think parents should have that tool either. What if they're third graders who have been held back multiple years? Like it's a stepbrother situation. Like you have a bunch of you have a bunch of third graders, and then there's like one 6'2" guy with a beard in the back, and he's like throwing shit at you. I don't know. Maybe in that case, special consideration would have to be taken. I'm willing to admit that.
Just remember, I think it was with the BIS program, but it could have been PBIS. I don't exactly remember, but we were given this list of all of these skills that basically kids need to have. And it was literally all the skills that you're supposed to be taught at a young age by your parents. And we were expected to teach these kids all these.
Yeah, that's your job. Yes, you are school teachers. They spend like 20 to 30 hours with you every week? Yes, you are partially responsible for raising them. That's the point. That's the entire point. That's the whole point. I have to teach these children social and emotional skills? Yeah, that's like, dog, elementary school is like 10% arithmetic and 90% social and emotional skills. Just so you guys know, okay, when somebody is getting the training necessary to be a kindergarten teacher or whatever, they're not being told the complex formulas of teaching colors, okay? What they're being taught is behavioral psychology for raising those children and teaching them social skills. That's the whole point. What do you think that like 5-year-olds are at school for like 8 hours a day or whatever, however long they are, I forget, 6 hours a day, learning colors? Like, why do you think they have reset? Why do you think any of this stuff exists?
These skills, and anytime a kid misbehaved, the implication was that we hadn't properly taught that skill enough. Not that the kid just thought misbehaving was.
Yeah, because the alternative is, oh, a kid misbehaved? Guess that's just a shit kid. Move on. What do you think it's going to say? Obviously, this is the case for every job in the universe. Whoa, something under your supervision didn't go right? Is there anything you could have done to improve that situation? And you can answer that, and you can go, well, no, I don't think there's something I could have done. And that's a valid answer sometimes. But yeah, it's a valid question to ask.
fun. Like that could never be the option. It was always back to, oh, well, did they understand the expectation? They have the skills to really follow through on the expectation. Was your expectation too hard, too high? Let's talk about bringing those down and being more gracious. Yet for all the talk of grace with students, teachers are held to these like awful standards when it comes.
It's not fair. Why don't students have to do the same amount of work as their adult teachers with master's degrees who are paid to do this work? That's not fair. Well,
Comes to data, test scores, and everything we do is tracked essentially. Now is also a good time to insert the grades conversation again. In case you've missed it on some of my other videos, there is a massive movement, at least in America, I don't know about other countries, to completely get rid of grades and to basically have just like mastery standards where either somebody is not meeting a standard, or exceeding a standard. So you can't get an F on anything, you can't fail anything. Nothing is graded to go into a grade book with the exception of these kind of mini standardized tests that are called different things. They might be called benchmarks or just these like data team quizzes. And
okay, I'm not fully up on this, but as I understand, this is like objectively better because grades will artificially inflate the scores of kids who have a lot of spare time and kids who are very diligent with their memories, but it doesn't necessarily pertain to how well they've learned something. Whereas like the idea of grading, like you're not like grades are prissy shit, okay? I have not thought about my elementary school grades ever since the nanosecond I entered like 6th grade. And I haven't thought about my middle school grades since the moment I entered high school. And I haven't thought about my high school grades since the moment I entered college. And none of my college grades mattered because then I started live streaming. Grades don't really indicate mastery. They indicate like memory and like whether or not you have ADHD. And the idea of like a general mastery thing is probably a lot better. Okay, I know like a lot of people who are young right now are listening, so I'm going to use, this is going to be like the nerdiest, gayest analogy I've ever done, okay? But in order to like make this point, I'm going to talk about video games for a minute, okay? So, like, a big part of playing a video game is you get better as you play it, and boss battles are basically a test of your knowledge and mastery of the game. That's why they're more difficult than regular content. So, if you could imagine, like, imagine playing a story campaign where you get, like, score as you play through it, and then it all adds up to a final score at the end, and that score at the end is meant to, like, determine how good you are at the game, you know? And think of, like, 2 ways of doing this, okay? Imagine one system where there are, like, a bunch of Ubisoft quests all over the place. Like, the map is big, and there are, like, 50 million things that you can do, and every time you do something, you add a bit of score to your total. And then at the end, like, if you did all the things, you get the high score, because you did all the things, so you have it. And none of the individual challenges are difficult or that thoughtful, but they're basically like little rote exercises of time and pattern recognition. And then you have another system where there's like a big open world, but there's stuff to do, but you don't get scored on any of it. And there are just like, I don't know, a dozen boss fights. And the boss fights are incrementally more difficult, and you get judged based on your performance in those fights. And then at the end, like if you did really well in all those, that's like the end. So for those who kind of follow this analogy, it should be pretty obvious. The latter system is a better way of actually testing your skill. In the former, you still have to put in a lot of time and effort and energy, but altogether, it's not really a demonstration of your mastery at the end. It's a demonstration of how much time you were willing to commit, how much attention you were willing to commit. Whereas in the latter, it could potentially be a lot better because you're kind of being graded where it counts, you know? This is like a loose analogy, but to be fair, our current schooling and grading system have been around for a very long time, like centuries. And it's been bad for a really long time, too. I think there are other arguments to make as well. Homework doesn't seem to work that well. I personally, as somebody who completed school, never felt like I learned much from homework. I never did homework to demonstrate a mastery of the subject. I did homework because my grades would suffer if I didn't. I never did a homework and then thought, wow, now I know this subject better. I would do the learning in the class, and then it was just a repeat of the class, but more boring because I had to do it in my own home instead of when I'm in the class, you know? Yeah, the data supports this too. Yeah. So I'm okay with this. The funny thing is, this idiot who we're watching the YouTube video of has been complaining about teachers being overworked, and she's about to start complaining about a system that would take a huge workload off teachers. Not having to grade an umpteen billion homework and like quiz assignments would take a ton of work off the shoulders of teachers, and she's about to complain. This is why I'm saying, like, I don't even care when she accurately says a part of the schooling system is bad, because she's too stupid to understand the solution. Like, she's just pointing at it and going, well, I didn't like that, and then she'll, like, argue for something that makes it worse. Yeah, true, Demon Mom, yeah. Homework as, like, a concept is kind of a remnant from the philosophy of public schooling as a way of instructing children for factory work. Because if you think about it, public schooling is a relatively modern thing, and the reason we even have public schooling is because the average expectation of, in terms of, like, how much does a person need to know to be an effective worker, that went up. So there was a push by, like, industrialists to have public schooling funded by the government because they were essentially raising young people to develop the skills necessary to be effective workers. And this is kind of a deviation from, like, tutelage-based systems of the past, where only some, like, very wealthy people would get, like, mentors. But the mentorship, like, if you were like a king in Europe and you had a mentor or like a prince or whatever, like, you weren't getting homework. The entire focus was on you learning. Obviously, I'm not suggesting mentorship for every little prince and princess in class or whatever. What I'm suggesting is that we understand our current model of grading and teaching is not born out of a pure desire for learning, but often for rote memorization and cuckoldry, which I'm not totally in support of.
Those are the only things that are tracked, but yet they don't affect whether a student can fail or not. In fact, like 99.725, I made that number up, percent of kids just automatically get passed on to the next grade. And that to me is another massive thing that has changed since when I went to school. Like, kids actually could be held back when I went to school, but there's been a massive movement against ever holding kids back anymore. So even
I don't think holding kids back has been shown to be an effective way. Holding a kid back, like, fucks them, like, for life potentially. I haven't heard it, like, there's, you know, we're kind of talking like edge case stuff here with, yeah, I don't know, like, the data on this specifically, but I can't imagine holding a kid back is the best system for helping them understand a subject. God's honest truth is that, like, 2 years out of college and you're going to forget 99% of the stuff you learned in school anyway, except for the social and emotional skills. Those stick around forever.
even the natural consequence, or if you want to call it a punishment, I don't know, of having to repeat a grade.
That's not, that's an insane punishment. If we're, okay, the idea that she would even consider calling that a punishment is psychotic. Like, even by her framework, she should be arguing that it's a necessary but regrettable step to help a child get, like, another chance to learn these basic skills. But in her mind, it's like, oh, you're a bad kid? Oh, well, bad kids get to be for life. Here's a repeat. Hope the taxpayers don't mind spending a bunch more money doing nothing except punishing you on a repeat year.
Because you goofed around, didn't learn the content, didn't do any homework, even that's gone now. So just everything within modern education, it almost feels like it's just conspiring to make it 100% impossible for teachers to actually do their job, which is why we're seeing the
i.e., we can't beat them as much.
mass exodus of.
She's apparently a Christian teacher, according to an old video of hers. This doesn't surprise me at all. Not even remotely.
Teachers leaving the profession. So my public service announcement in all of this one probably felt a little rantier than usual. But just for action research, I read probably like hundreds of different posts from teachers, like all over the internet that are
Posts. That's where you're getting your info from. Your selection bias is cultivating the posts of other frustrated teachers and former teachers. She shouldn't have been a teacher. You don't have the... Your neurons aren't developed enough to understand how to do research. You don't... Oh my God.
more recent about experiences they're having with the PBIS systems and BIST and restorative circles. And it made me mad afresh for teachers, not only because it's getting worse, but it flooded back all the memories from the 8 years that I was in the classroom and just all the stress and angst and nonsense. And ironically, like my constant...
Interesting how all of the memories she is referring to have to do with her emotional state and not the educational attainment of the children. Really think about that for a second. Like, her job is to raise these kids as a teacher of 5-year-olds. Like, you are in part raising them. Let's not be delusional about what your job is when you're doing this, okay? You are not getting a master's degree to do this teaching work so that you can learn how to teach them 2 + 2 = 4. You're doing it so you can be an effective child rearer and teach them valuable social skills. And her memory of this is her emotional state. She's not talking about how, yeah, during those 8 years, I felt like I really couldn't do a good job of, like, helping these kids, you know? Also, if she was a Christian teacher, by which I assume she means a teacher for a Christian school, That ain't a public school, which means that all of the talk here about standardized disciplinary treatment is completely meaningless. I assume she did work at a public school at least once, because I think she referred to it earlier. Maybe she did like Christian teaching for a time.
Fear of being in trouble for something crazy. Meanwhile, like the kids are never fearful of getting in trouble over anything. So my public service announcement is discipline actually equals love. Somebody also wrote,
holy shit, dude. Well, that's a reinforcement of the Christian teacher narrative there. Fucking hell, man. There comes the Christianity. Yeah, the discipline equals love thing comes across as pretty rapey to me, too. Maybe it's a good thing she's away from kids. Yeah, no, the whole, like, sadomasochistic, I'm hurting you because I care about you shit, you will never be able to convince me that shit is not, like, hardcore pedo-coded. Zero shot.
That in one of the comment sections of the survey yesterday, and I cheered. I was like, yes, yes. Because the truth is, what we are setting kids and teens and young adults up for is just a disastrous future. They're not going to be ready for the real world. And they're not going to be happy. The truth is, I don't know if you could think of in your own life.
They weren't beaten as children. They won't be effective as adults. Never mind all the research that corporal punishment worsens everything going forward. Sounds like she's not ready for the real world. She made a 20-minute rant video about how unfair it was that she had to do her job, and that there were students of the teaching job that she chose to take because it's her job who were mean to her.
The times where maybe you had a holiday or vacation and you literally did like nothing but eat Doritos all day and like, you know, hours of social media and hours of movies. Maybe that feels like a reward for like a day, but a life of that is...
It's your f***ing time off. What the f*** are you talking about? What? What do you... What, is she like... Oh, your kid had a summer break and they spent it relaxing? Oh my God.
Is actually miserable because there's tons of natural consequences that come along with that. And that's honestly what we're setting these kids up for. We're creating this artificial bubble where, you know, kids can like cuss out a teacher or somebody else and we tell them, I'm not mad, you're not in trouble. And the extent of their consequence is having a conversation, which usually actually is with somebody that kind of takes...
Well, to be fair, having a conversation with this bitch would be the greatest punishment I could imagine. 5-year-old me would take the paddle over having to have a conversation with her for any length of time, for sure. Okay? My ass, my cheeks, all right? They can take it. My brain, I don't think it could.
Their side and, you know, says, yeah, that teacher was so mean, it was wrong. And then their teacher is in trouble at the end of it. So again, that feels like a triple victory for the kid. But we are not doing these kids any favors.
Resentment.
I think we also need to make a return to reality. And that's the fact that people are basically motivated by two things in life, love and fear. And I think that...
Yep. Remember what I've said. Authoritarians are weak people, and she is vomiting projection all over this video. That's what motivates her. She has no higher moral impulses. She doesn't have any broader reason. Her faculties of reason are atrophied. She doesn't have any, like, higher consideration. She's essentially, like, admitting to being an NPC. You know what else is motivated entirely by love and fear? Ants. Like, what do you mean? Like, they love eating and they fear, like, I don't know, the stomp. I mean, what do you, like, you're basically saying you're like an animal who only responds to immediate visceral impulses and you don't have any higher moral considerations. But honestly, I already thought that about her, so whatever.
The modern push in academia is you've got to get your students to love you. You got to get your students to love their subject and then they'll behave.
It is true that when students like their teacher and learn to love, she's literally talking down the idea of students loving the subject and the teacher. Oh man, these teaching guidelines are like, yeah, if the students are having fun and they respect their teacher, they'll learn better. Pfft, liberal nonsense. Get out the paddle.
And that might be true in some instances, but it's not working out well because it's very difficult to get somebody to love you, especially...
Yeah, I don't doubt you've had trouble with that.
When you are an authority figure that's trying to get them to do work and get them to do hard things, if they don't value that,
skill
also,
issue.
You just can't control that. I can't control as a teacher, like if students like me or not.
Skill issue. Oh my God, dude, she's like a projector. She's not even smart enough to understand that everything she's saying right now is like the most obvious read of her mind state. You know.
That that could be its own video. That was one of the hardest, most frustrating things for me as a teacher, because, you know, it's truly impossible. You can do one thing and one set of students will love it, and a set of parents will think you're the best, and then the other half of the classroom thinks you're the worst person ever, and their parents agree. It's just so impossible, but it sets teachers up on this hamster wheel of just burnout, all when it doesn't have to be this way. So I think realistically, if, you know,
yeah, that's what set teachers on burnout. The expectation their students like the class. Yep. That's what leads to burnout.
maybe a student doesn't love school, they don't love doing their homework, that's kind of normal. I wouldn't say that like a kid's a bad person for that, but if they have no fear of anything happening, like being held back, not graduating, losing privileges at home, losing privileges at school, if there's no love for the teaching, the subject, nothing, no love for education, and no fear of consequences, what we're getting in modern schools is about what you would expect it would look like. Kids are angry, they're resentful, their parents back them up no matter what they do.
She's unironically advocating that the best way to fix this situation would be to beat the children. That's, again, we're talking 5-year-olds. 5-year-old in propeller hat. This kid specifically, she wants to beat this child with a paddle. When she says, these kids are cussing me out, they're throwing stuff, I just want everyone to remember, like, vaguely what children look like, because I often think, when I think of, like, students and teachers, I think of being in high school. I just want you to, we're dialing down the age here significantly. This dumb bitch is in a classroom full of this kid. It's like 30 of this kid with the same hat, all at the same angle, making the same face. And she's complaining about the expectation being set that these kids like her in the class. Little Timmy. Poor little Timmy.
And nothing bad's gonna happen to anyone except for the teacher if she dare upsets anybody. So I think it's just honestly, it feels like such a losing job for a lot of teachers today. And a job that they used to love when there was just some basic supports in place, it's now absolutely miserable. At least I'm speaking for myself. That is how I kind of ended up feeling. So my solution wouldn't be to swing from one pendulum all the way to the other side, but to try to have a more balanced approach where there are appropriate consequences that are negative and that deter students.
Violence.
But there are interventions in between there, still relationship building, still kindness, still not advocating like any kind of abuse of any kind of course, but
except for paddling them, the thing you specifically mentioned. Okay.
something that actually makes students feel some of the consequences of their negative choices. And the truth is, at the end of the day, we definitely need parental support more than any time ever. I know that there are some crazy teachers out there that go viral on TikTok and social media, and they're insane, but I can promise you that is not the vast majority of teachers. Most teachers are kind, good people that genuinely wanted to help young people live a better life through the power of education. And I'll stand by that. But the more
oh man, dude, I might be reading into it too much here, but I actually think this is kind of pointed. Listen to exactly what she says.
of teachers. Most teachers are kind, good people that genuinely wanted to help you.
Wanted. Are kind, good people, present tense, because she's referring to herself, wanted to help kids. She's referring to herself here. She's so locked, like she's such a narcissist. She's projecting so hard. She's only talking about herself here. Nothing that she's saying in her mind is like a broad statement of fact of teaching. It's like she's literally just venting. And she's really bad at hiding it too. She should have never been the teacher. She's not smart enough to be one. I actually mean that. Leaving aside that she's like a power-hungry authoritarian bitch who wants to beat children, and a bunch of other negative stuff I could say, I just don't think she's smart enough for it. I don't want the next generation of children to be raised by people like this.
Young people live a better life through the power of education. And I'll stand by that. But the more nonsense that's created in education, the more those good teachers are actually going to want to leave and find something where they can really make a difference. Because most teachers at this point are just feeling like their hands are tied and they're just actually the ones that are being punished by the education system in completely unfair ways. So
was she paddled? Vosh, out of curiosity, what's the like-dislike ratio in this one? Oh, this video went viral positively by conservatives. Obviously. Because this is just conservatism specifically in the avenue of teaching. It's a small channel. This video went viral. Somebody in chat linked it. And you'll notice, from what I'm seeing, every single reply here that is liked by the video creator is teachers and former teachers venting about how awful kids are. Tay Zonde? Oh, what's up? I was denied recess and forced. Tay, no! Rip. Like, look at these videos, man. No, it's not just black schools. The collapse of education is coming to a neighborhood near you. It's like she knows that it's conservatives watching this, and she's like just skipping past all the dog whistling. So she's like, hey, listen, it's not just the blacks, okay? It's gonna happen to all of us. Like, yeah, very, yeah, it's coming to a neighborhood near you. Like, she's saying it to white conservatives. Yeah, this is just normal whistling. Students are attacking teachers for crazy reasons. Why kids can't read or regulate their emotions, old school versus new school. Why quit teaching? Violent kids, corrupt unions, catty coworkers, great inflation, and too much work. Teaching Gen Z equals nightmare. Phenomenal skill issue here. How to teach Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Critical race theory in schools, a teacher tells all. Oh no.
Hi friends, this is
Top liked comment. I find it shocking when I hear about how some people were taught about slavery. I was going to school in the 70s and 80s, and I was never taught anything like what this teacher said. I was always told it was a terrible practice, we fought a war to end it, etc. I also learned about Jim Crow laws, redlining, the Civil Rights Act. Same with the Indians. I was told about how they were treated, learned about the Trail of Tears, the broken treaties, and all that stuff. However, it was never taught in such a way as to try to make me feel like it was my fault or that I should feel bad about it. So now we know the narrative of the video, which is she does believe that critical race theory is being taught in schools in the form of telling white children to feel bad about slavery, a thing that is real and definitely happens. At my son's high school, they honored a teacher for her CRT immersion programs and getting kids involved, except when she excluded any she deemed Caucasians from the group. She gave a speech again demonizing all whites. Very real stuff. I guess, I don't know, I guess it's kind of refreshing that a black woman is making racist videos where she whines about not getting to beat and probably children, and then she has to make a video explaining to the whites who are watching her for like the affirmation on her points. Hey, listen, it's not just us blacks, okay? It'll happen to all of us, because you know she sees her comments and you know that they're absolutely full of conservatives going, yeah, you're right, black kids are terrible these days. And she in her mind she's like, yes, okay, but it'll happen to all of us. I'm not joking. I genuinely think that's why she made that video. They're teaching kids seppuku for white guilt. True. Why teachers quit. Bad students teaching Gen Z. You were teaching elementary school. Okay. And also, she was doing the teaching before and for 8 years, which means that it's possible she would have been teaching like late millennial. Like, what are you talking about? Okay. Oh, see, at this point, she was still teaching. Okay. Oh, yeah, I quit teaching private school. My nightmare of teaching story time. Great. Did she ever do public school teaching? She's ruined an entire generation. Wait, do you think she's listed on one of those websites that rates teachers? What? Does she give her actual name? She probably doesn't. Fuck, that'd be funny. You read a bunch of people being like, this bitch sucked? Yeah. Aren't those just for college professors? I've seen one for high school teachers. They're probably parent websites where they rate like private school teachers as well. But I don't know. Wouldn't it be fair to say any isolated human tends to be bad, but humans' innate social pressures cause us to tend to be good? No, I don't think so. And societies are better if more people have a say, and worse if less people do, because we cede to the isolated humans, i.e., authoritarianism. No, I don't. I don't believe that. I don't think it has to do with that. I think it has to do with like incentive structures for good behavior and forms of social ostracization, but not necessarily being like alone. But well, actually, I guess there's like there's something to what you're saying, but it's broader than that, I think. Oh, damn! Wow. Guys, are you ready for the least surprising thing? Editors, cut this in. It's all insane Christian rapture shit. Christians will face persecution in America. Prepare your family, friends, and children. The 3 dark days prophecy totally is fake. False prophecy 101. Oh man, she's involved. The rapture dream. The bride has made herself ready. Before Jesus comes back, this will happen. Days of Noah and the Rapture, mid-trib. Yeah, literally, is she a Christian Zionist? Well, a lot of Christians are Zionists. CERN and spiritual warfare. Will we see demons? Oh my god.
So Satan gets...
She shouldn't be... Okay, bitch. Holy shit. There are limits, all right? I try not to be too mean about this stuff, but there are limits. Oh my god. How do we know a demon isn't hiding behind this face blur?
power through human agreement. There's laws in the spirit world that determine what he is and isn't allowed to do, and of course this includes demons and fallen angels. Think back to what happened in the Garden of Eden. Satan essentially had to trick Adam and Eve into giving away their authority by disobeying God. If they would have resisted him and not fallen for his schemes, then we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. So fast forward to modern times, Satan hasn't changed his schemes. He is deceiving the occult world just like he deceived Adam and Eve. Sorcery is essentially connecting with the demonic realm and making an exchange. Man gets power and whatever else he's looking.
How wild do you have to be to not only be religious, but to believe in sorcery as a Christian in the modern day? Holy shit. You have to be so far gone.
For. But Satan and his demons get a foothold not only in that person's life, but in the world. So how does all this connect with CERN? If they are in fact doing the occult rituals that it looks like they're doing, and if they
at CERN. That's the super collider. She's one of those people who believes that the super collider is opening a portal to hell. This is the plot of doom. This is literally the plot of, okay.
They have the agreement of earthly authority figures. They are actually, whether they realize it or not, working in partnership with Satan to increase darkness. And this increase of darkness impacts the actual events of what happens in our world. I'm sure everybody's noticed that the demonic things everywhere in the media, in entertainment, in people's actions have gone off the charts. And this is a result of the agreement that man is making with the forces of darkness. Ephesians 6:12 explains this.
I've got a picture of the lead director of CERN. Now you have to admit there's pretty clearly some high-tech stuff on display here. I feel like we can trust this guy. All right? He's kind of hot. He kind of is.
It says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places." So whatever exchanges that they are doing, I think it's unlikely that we're going to see like winged creatures flying around. But we might notice the actual events of the world changing for the worse. However, the Bible actually...
Isn't it crazy how even the ultra super duper religious people have like conformed to a version of their delusions that prevents them from having to own up to any evidence? Like, miracles happen in the Bible. How is Satan going to manifest his will on earth after the demonic CERN plans come through? Oh, well, people might wear red more often, and there will be more swearing on MTV. Really? Satan, Lucifer, first of the fallen, second most powerful entity in the cosmos? That's what we're getting? He built CERN for swear words on MTV? Come on. Like, have some balls. Say there will be flying demons. I honestly have more respect for the people who make concrete doomsday predictions, because at least then they have to shuffle through the embarrassment of readjusting the date and lying about why it didn't go right the first time. You know, like, at least then they're putting something on the table. Put some skin in the game. Come on.
It does predict a literal time in our future where the abyss will be open. And at that point, I think it's more likely that we will actually see with our natural eyes whatever some of these principalities and powers and entities actually look like. But I don't think that that's going to happen on July 5th. If you're a Christian, I think for practical terms, we need to realize that these kind of things increase the spiritual warfare in our life. It increases persecution against believers. And Ephesians 6 also tells us what to do about this.
I'm very happy about the fact that 30 seconds into watching a video on her teaching experience, I had everything about her kind of nailed down, and it's just been like as bad as the worst. You know what I mean?
Verse 13 says, "Therefore take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having all done, stand." We want to look at our lives and make sure that we don't have agreement with the demonic realm through sin. If you have unrepentant, willful sin going on in your life, then you are actually making yourself chewing gum for the devil. And nobody wants to be the devil's chewing gum, right? In addition to putting on the armor, Ephesians 6:18 says we need to be praying always with all prayer and supplication.
Okay, I could be totally off on this, but doesn't the Bible not actually give much in the way of specifics about interactions between sin and demonic influence? Like, there are Christians who are like, yeah, dude, the devil will climb up your asshole if ever you like jerk off or something. But I'm pretty sure that if you just go by Christian canon and the stuff written, all of that is total horseshit. Like, I'm pretty sure if you get like if you're just sticking to the stuff that's actually like, I don't know, biblical canon or whatever, it's like they're just making it up. There's some mention, but it's not like the way some of these Christians talk, you would think they're Shintoists, where they think like the spirits of evil and good exist all around them, that like angels and demons are vying for control of every space in the world, and you purify it with your... That's not Christian canon. You're not a Shintoist. You don't pray to your local river. What are you talking about? There's hell and there's heaven and there's here. What...
In the Spirit, being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. And we cannot forget our sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. If I had to just pick two things to do for our spiritual safety and protection, it would be praying and being in the Bible every single day. More than once if you can. Things are going to get dark.
It's so sad, man. I know she's like a horrible abuser who beats children and probably molests them or whatever. Thinking that more so now than ever before, by the way. But like, she is such a victim of the shit that got drilled into her head, you know?
Darker and darker, and any kind of sin that you have in your life that's undealt with, you can just expect the temptation to increase like 1,000-fold as we get deeper and deeper into the end times. And the more sin that you have in your life, you're actually opening yourself up to the possibility of greater deception. So even though CERN and all of these things are interesting to a lot of people, it just should, at least for believers, be a little bit of a wake-up call about the darkness that...
It's all from Dante's Inferno. Yeah. One guy did like a mushroom trip, and now we all know what the... Do you think she's into QAnon? Yes. God, it's wild. Israel in the end times, God has a plan. Oh, wait, she's going to do the thing. This is what I'm always talking to you guys about. Fundamentalist Christians believe Jews need to control the Holy Land in order to bring about the rapture. The Jews are literally like the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood sacrifice. They're literally the blood sacrifice to bring about the rapture.
God is not done with Israel, and all Israel will be saved. God's plan for Israel and the church is laid out in Romans chapters 9 through 11. Before I go any further, I want to clarify some of the most commonly asked questions that I get. So number one, I want to reiterate that the church does not replace Israel. Some people say anytime you look in the New Testament and see the word Israel, you should just replace the word church and keep it moving. But if you literally read Romans chapters 9 through 11 and do that, none of the passages will make any sense. I dare you to try it. Now
this is her third channel? What? We can't keep doing this, man. I'm not looking at a third channel. Why does she have a third channel that's also about religious lunacy, nanners? Why split that up? Incredible stuff. Oh, Christ. She runs a children's association. Or at least her family does. I assume it's the same. How many Hefzibas can there be? Maybe that's a different Hefziba? I don't know how common of a name that is. Apparently she's currently becoming a certified life coach. God. Man, whatever.
This doesn't mean that Israel has a different plan of salvation. Some people have taught that in the past, but I would totally disagree with that. The New Testament makes it clear that Jesus is the only way to get to the Father. I'm also not saying that somebody is automatically saved by virtue of their DNA and ancestry. Some will go to the other extreme and say that salvation is only for Israel. That's not true either, because the Bible has made clear that it was always God's plan to have a family including all nations, tribes, and tongues. It's also important to note that God's overall plan is to unite us all together. In Romans 11, Israel is the olive tree and the Gentiles are the wild branch. We actually get grafted in. When all is said and done, God is going to have one big happy family made of all nations, tribes, and tongues, all worshiping the Lord Jesus Christ. But we haven't quite got there yet. There's much more to the story. And that's where Romans 11 comes in. So let's break down our
I'm Christian. What she's saying is pretty much heretical. It's based on Catholic fan fiction written hundreds of years after about... Yeah. I mean, that's always how it is, right?
categories. In Romans 11, we have Israel and we have the Gentiles. If you're not an Israelite, congratulations, you're a Gentile. Now, in both of those categories, we have unbelieving Israelites and believing Israelites, and we have unbelieving Gentiles and believing Gentiles. Romans 11 says that there is always going to be a remnant of believing Israelites. These Israelites believe in Jesus as their Messiah. Now, in the Gentile category, when a Gentile comes to faith, they are equally a part of the church with the believing Israelites. So in Christ, whether you're an Israelite or whether you're a Gentile, you are completely equal. And that reality is
What if you're an Israelite who doesn't believe in Christianity, aka the ones that live in Israel? Israel is a Jewish country. What if they're Jewish? What happens to the non-believing Israelites?
is more fully explained in the book of Ephesians. But as a whole, the Israelites rejected Jesus as their Messiah. However, Paul assures us that God did not reject his people. Now, this is where it gets kind of complex. Romans chapter 11 actually describes that Israel, aside from the remnant, was actually hardened so that Gentiles could come into the faith family. So right now, until this day, the majority of Israelites are in a hardened state and they don't recognize Jesus as their Messiah. However, the good news is this will not always be the case. In the future, Israel will acknowledge Jesus as their Messiah.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering which flavor of this would be. So she's essentially saying that when the rapture comes, the Israelites in Israel will all convert from Judaism to Christianity because they're like God's chosen people. Yeah, there are a couple of versions of this she could go with. In truth, I think most evangelicals think that Jews are, well, going to hell. She seems to believe that they'll just all magically convert to Christianity as soon as the rapture hits, this is kind of like the Christian evangelical doomsday cult version of believing that sickly old pets get sent up to a farm upstate, you know? Like, well, what happens to all the Israelites when the rapture comes? All of God's chosen people. They all become Christian at the last second. You know?
It says, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers and sisters, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in, and in this way all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob, and this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. Verse 28 says, as far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies for your sake, but as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs. For God's gift and his call are irrevocable. Let's hop up to verse 11. It says, again, I asked, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery?
Hardened state in terms of Christianity means that God is making them sin. God hardened Pharaoh's heart in Exodus so he wouldn't release the Jews, just so God had an excuse to do genocide. So he's basically saying that she's basically saying that Jews are being magically mind-controlled by God to be Jews so they can fulfill the evangelical doomsday prophecy. But like he'll release the mind control at the last second so they can become Christians. That's literally what she's saying. Okay, gotcha.
Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their full inclusion?
What?
Again, I asked, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their full inclusion?
Hold on.
To make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world and their loss means riches for the Gentiles, how much greater riches will their full inclusion?
If their transgression means riches for the world, the Israelites choosing to remain Jews means riches for the world, and their loss, I'm not following. Me either, but can we just assume this last bit right here is Hitler particles? It's not as though evangelical Christianity isn't deeply anti-Semitic. It obviously is. We'll just assume this bit at the end here is Hitler particles, okay? Blitler? Nah, this isn't a Blitler situation. Her politics do not seem to be, like, in any way, shape, or form like a Hebrew Israelite at all. They're just standard, like, dumb American evangelical. It's just regular Hitler. She just happens to not be white. It's incidental in this case. That took a while, but, you know, we learned, we lived, We laughed and we loved.